It's a great pleasure as Master of Birkbeck to welcome you to this year's Orwell Memorial Lecture. To particularly welcome the members of the Orwell Trust who are here and the members of Orwell's family, and this is very much a partnership between Birkbeck Orwell Trust. That partnership was personified by Sir Bernard Crick, who died last December and who was responsible for the founding of this lecture with some of the royalties from his life of Orwell. So we should remember the tremendous role which Bernard played in the life of the college as a professor for many years, as a fellow, and also as the effectively patron saint, perhaps, of this lecture. We have had, of course, a distinguished series of speakers in this Orwell Memorial Lecture. Interestingly, however, if you look at Bernard Crick's entry on Wikipedia, not perhaps the most accurate source of information, and certainly not in this case because it says that the lectures ended in the year 2000 due to lack of funds. So that is very much not the case, and perhaps we invite somebody appropriately computer literate to amend the entry on Wikipedia. The lectures are very much alive and very much having been graced by distinguished speakers, not least this year's speaker Hilary Mantel, distinguished career as a novelist, both of historical novels and other novels, including one set in a university campus and winner of many awards. But of course, all those we invite and all those the Orwell Trust invites are very distinguished. We don't always, however, strike as lucky as we have done this year with Hilary winning the Man Booker Prize since she was invited to give this lecture. So I congratulate the committee of the Orwell Trust on their prescience and genius in selecting somebody who became even more distinguished and even more well-known in the interval between being invited and giving this lecture. And of course, her Booker Prize winning novel is set around the career of Thomas Cromwell, and it's that subject and that era which she has chosen to lecture to us tonight. And so it's a delight to invite Hilary Mantel to give this year's George Orwell Memorial Lecture.
Last time I stood on a public platform in quite this way, they gave me a cheque for £50,000. No collection will be taken at the end of the evening. You'll be pleased to know. 1539. The whole of Europe was eyeing Henry VIII's throne. And he began fortifying his realm. A chain of castles and forts along the south coast and in the west country. It was a huge undertaking and went at a furious pace. His minister Thomas Cromwell wrote, "What a realm will England be when His Grace has set walls according to the ditches that run about us? England will then be more like a castle than a realm." Now, castle walls, of course, keep invaders out, but within the fortress, everyone has to work together for the common good. Henry was fortifying his country against foreign invasion, papal terrorism, and he had good reason to fear, because when France and the Holy Roman Emperor were quarrelling, England was safe enough. But in 1538 they signed a peace treaty, which meant they were free to turn their attention to England, this realm of heresy. Henry's whole status as a legitimate ruler was now in question. The threat of excommunication had been hovering over him since 1533. In 1534, he made a decisive break with Rome, and England ceased to acknowledge Rome's jurisdiction, gradually withdrew Rome's revenues, and in the December of 1538, the sentence of excommunication was confirmed by papal bull. And just want to stop leaving the threat of excommunication hovering over Henry and see what we can do about the sound. Vocal whining. That sounds better. Is that one? Yes. Thank you. Now, by this date, Henry, of course, was head of the church in England. And he was his own boss, so you may wonder why a sentence of excommunication mattered so much. But it mattered because it wasn't just a spiritual penalty. It excluded the victim not only from Christian burial, but also from daily being in the world. You didn't give food or shelter to an excommunicated person. You didn't pay him any mark of deference or respect. You cut off social and economic relations with him. So the question became, what duty did Henry's subjects owe to him after the sentence of excommunication had come into force? Was he not, in the eyes of the Catholic Christian community, deposed? Not all medieval canon lawyers would have agreed with that, but in the practical circumstances of the time, excommunication was a political weapon. Henry's throne was not secure anyway. He was only the second Tudor king. His line wasn't deep-rooted. His heir, Edward, was still a child in the nursery. And this sentence made him, as it were, a reasonable target for deposition or assassination. In 1536, there'd been a rebellion in the north, which had almost plunged the country into civil war. It wouldn't have been so dangerous if it had only been an outbreak of popular protest, but it was also a conspiracy that involved some members of the nobility who were in touch with the emperor through the Spanish ambassador in London. So you had enemies within, enemies without, plenty of men who considered themselves in line for the throne if only Henry could be brought down. A precarious situation, and hence the fortifications. Henry needed to fortify the realm, and Thomas Cromwell, his minister, had to fortify Henry.